What's going on, everybody? So really quick, a lot of people ask me why we're looking into leasing over purchasing, and realistically is leasing is usually typically a better option for the customer versus the dealership or versus the bank and financing. I kind of got into a conversation with somebody online, and they were trying to tell me that leasing was not good for the customer. It was more of a benefit for the dealership. Ultimately, I think he was trying to get to the bank, so I would just say this to you. When you look at certain contracts, I would say that, like a lawyer, wording and verbiage is very key. So when you say it's a benefit for the dealer, that's a lie. Anytime you move a vehicle, whether it's purchasing, financing, actually financing is the prime reason or the prime benefit for a dealer if you finance through them. But anytime you sell a car, whether it's cash purchase, financing, or leasing, the dealer gets money either way from moving the vehicle. When it comes to leasing, the benefit is actually the customer. And the reason why I want you to understand that is why everybody cannot qualify for a lease. A lease does not benefit the bank and say long term. What it actually does, and that's why most banks don't do it, it's usually through the actual manufacturer of the vehicle that you can get a lease. So you got to keep that in mind, because that's very key. If only the manufacturer of the company will offer a lease, but yet leasing is a benefit for the dealership, then why won't banks do it? So it's not really a good option for financing or for a bank financial purposes. So then you may ask, well, why do they actually allow leases? Well, leases are chosen for or given as an option for what they would like to call tier 1 buyers. And the reason why that's important, like I said before, everybody can't go into a lease. So when you're a tier 1 buyer, that truthfully means you can buy anything you want and within certain parameters. But it means you're a good credit candidate for getting a vehicle. And most people with that type of credit standing are very picky. So with you being a good credit candidate person, what they would rather do is put you into a lease and get you to spend your money with them. Now think about this. If I'm a financial institution or a manufacturer, right, and I put you into, say, for instance, a Lexus RX 350, and you love the brand. When your lease is up and you truly love the brand, you love the services and so forth you got, you will come back and get another Lexus. So in the long run, I'm keeping a same customer to a brand. Now the thing about leasing is, somewhere along the lines, and I haven't done the recent figures, but it used to be about 48 or 55% of all people in a lease return to the same manufacturer. That's key, because 1 for every 2 customers, per se, is going to buy again from you again. So not only does on the lease return, it allows me to now get a vehicle for my inventory to offer as a certified pre-owned that should be in decent condition because of all the lease parameters given around the vehicle, which now becomes a good offer for people who are looking for used cars on the market that understand purchasing a certified pre-owned is a good option versus just buying a vehicle with no warranty, no history, so forth. But you return a vehicle to the manufacturer, they now can advertise as a certified pre-owned and get those customers. Now, the benefit of leasing to the customer, and why I strongly support it is you usually get a vehicle with way more equipment than the actual cost. Historically, if you look at, I would say, mid-range $50,000 vehicles and up, when you go into a lease, and I say historically because today's market is kind of different. Historically, when you go into a lease, you were almost paying $200 less than a purchase price for the vehicle. So I could get the same vehicle. Often, if I looked at the same price I was getting for, say, a base model vehicle in a purchase, I could get the same vehicle in a lease for close to the same payment, if not still some form of benefit. And the key with that is that I have more car for the money I'm spending. And then when my lease is up, I'm not married to the car. Because most cars, if you heard historically, and anybody that's been buying cars over the last 20 years knows that the vehicles depreciate the moment you take them off the lot. So the depreciation factor is there, but it's something you're not really too concerned about. If you're not really concerned about the depreciation factor, then it makes the vehicle even more appealing, because if the bottom falls out, let's just say with a lease you only pay for the parts you use. It's like renting a car. So if I buy a $60,000 car and they say it's going to have $35,000 worth of equity, I'm technically paying for the $25,000 of the vehicle plus tax, title, and license over 36 months. Now, that's kind of what you're seeing now. Back in the past, and I know people want to argue me this and so forth, so be it, but most previous versions, when you were leasing the vehicle, the residual value was usually somewhere right around 60 to say 65% of the car. So, which truthfully most cars used to depreciate right around 55 to 60% over 3 years. So when they're going at like 60 to 65, in theory, the car is not, the lease was never going to be a benefit to the lending financial institution, because you're walking most, like, I'll give you an example. The first lease I had to buy the car would have been, I want to say $31,000, but it was for sale on the market, same miles and everything, for $28,900, which means that the actual value of the car was probably less, or somewhere right around $25,000. So that was a $6,000 swing if I wanted to keep it. So it would make no sense for me to keep the lease. But now, like I try to explain to some people, if you take care of your lease vehicle and you don't meet the predetermined depreciation conditions that you set forth, for instance, like my mother, she got a lease with a 12,000 mile allowance. Well, ultimately she drove her car because of her location change at work. She went from driving 10-20 miles a day to like less than 1. She ended up only putting on her car 17,000 miles over 3 years. So when it came time to get a new car, when we took it in, they was like, oh, why don't you trade in? They appraised it. She had about $1,800 worth of equity in the car. That's always an option too. And that's what I try to explain to people. Because people say, oh, with a lease you don't own, you lose any values, yada, yada, yada. The truth of the matter is, even if you decide to, let's rephrase that, you can always decide if you want to trade out the car and get your value out the car, if there's any value to be had. So you're not stuck in just giving the car back. So if you want to trade it in, sell it, get your money out of it because you have equity, you can always do that. If you have no equity in a vehicle, you're never upside down, you just walk away. And I'm sure you know most people are familiar with the phrase of being upside down inside of a car.
Here's my water.
So you're never upside down in a vehicle. You always have the option to trade it in or sell it and get your equity out. With a lease, you're never upside down in the vehicle. You always have the option to just walk away from the car, which most people who ever purchased a car and want to get out of it early, somewhere around the 3-4 year mark, there's a strong possibility you're upside down, especially if you bought it new. And so that's a term that a lot of people are familiar with. So the reason why I like leasing is because I never have to worry about being upside down when it comes time to get another car. With the lease, I can walk away from the car, no strings attached, and go look for another vehicle. It's also the best way to get from being upside down in a vehicle for your next purchase. So if you're upside down in the car, think about leasing, because as long as the number isn't too crazy, you can bury that negative equity into the lease, and then at the end of that lease cycle, you can walk away from that negative equity scot-free. I've done that before too, to get rid of a car that someone told me I was, or at that point in time when I was younger and making bad decisions, I was about 10 grand upside down. Yes, 10 grand upside down. That was before I truly learned how the car industry works. So when people tell you leasing isn't a great option, it's just because they don't know how to make it benefit them. You can always purchase a vehicle. Everyone can purchase a vehicle. Not everyone can lease. And that should be your first key, that there's something to leasing. When they tell everyone they can't do it, when they tell you it's something that you have to qualify for, that's because it's a benefit there that you may not quite understand. So get educated. If you have any questions, please give me a call. This is just my quick run through about why I lease vehicles and why we were out looking for a lease instead of looking to purchase, because I know some people have been asking that question. Now, I will tell you this. Purchasing isn't out of the question, because if we found the right deal, which we kind of had something come up under our noses where we wasn't expecting, so we may end up purchasing a car just for the long-term benefit of owning it, because we have a daughter that's going to college. We may have to give her a car. So we may end up purchasing a vehicle, but my first choice, especially when it comes to my wife, is always leasing, because every 3 years I know she's in something new, and I'm not worried about vehicles breaking down, maintenance, and things of that nature. One quick keynote on a lease, why I love it so much, is that when you actually look at dollars to dollars, let's just say for nice smooth numbers, say I purchase a vehicle, tax, title, license out the door, it's at $72,000. If I finance that over 72 months with no interest, that's $1,000 a month. Say the lease number, the lease value comes out to $887, and I'm just throwing rough numbers out there, but I'll do a calculation. So the lease comes out to that. When you go through the whole point of $887 for 72 months, that's $63,000. I think somewhere around 63,054, somewhere around that number. And in the same timeline, the person that purchased the car at $72,000 has had one vehicle. In the lease, you've at least had two, possibly going into your third, or already in your third, because every lease program usually has an early out options, which is usually somewhere around the 6-month mark before your lease is up. So if you took advantage of the early out option with your lease when it was 6 months ahead of time, you would be in your third vehicle at $63,000. So you had 3 new cars, or 2, before this person has paid off their first one. Not to mention there's still $7,000 worth of money available. So if you take the 882 into 7,000, you're looking somewhere right around 8 months, 8 more months worth of payments. So you've had your third car for a year and a half, or at least half a year longer, before you even paid the same amount of money that came up in the initial purchase. Now, if you do any type of your basic maintenance that's required on your car for those entire 6 years, you're probably going to spend around at least one set of tire replacements, which will be somewhere around $1,000. You're going to look at another, let's just say, oil changes, brakes, maybe an alternator or something going out. Usually over the life of a 6-year vehicle, we always say there's probably going to be $3,000 of additional costs, whether it's repairs or maintenance, that's added on. So when you add that to the car, you're looking at that $72,000 going to $75,000 or $76,000. So if you switch that number to $76,000, you now have $12,000 worth of more costs for that vehicle you decide to purchase and keep that I never had to experience inside my lease. So if we're looking for dollars to dollars, I've legitimately, I want you to understand this, legitimately, I've had 3 new cars, and I'm technically a year to a year and a half, just over a year to just over a year, close to like a year and 3/4 into my 3rd new car before I ever spend the same amount of money that you spent. So when you look at it that way, dollar to dollar, realistically, I've had 3 new cars for the price of your 1. Now, some people say, but I got some value there, so you go trade it in. Okay, you go trade it in, you get, let's just say you get somewhere around 10 grand back for it. Well, I don't know. But you use that towards your next purchase. And then you do the exact same thing again. Before you get to the end of that loan, or that money you've spent, I would have had 6 new cars. You've had 2. At any point in time throughout that loan, if I didn't like the car, decided I didn't need the size, wanted something smaller, so forth, those were always my options. I never, if you go into the right lease, you never pay for service. You never pay for oil changes. You get all that included. So there is a benefit there. And that's why I try to tell people there is a benefit with leasing that most people don't understand. And because you don't understand it, that's why you can't see the benefit in it. So that's my quick rundown on leasing. That's why I like to lease, and that's why I tell people leasing is a benefit. If you have any questions, reach out to me. You can always hit your boy up. ICNV Drivers Edition, thanks for tuning in for this quick, I guess, rant or refresher or just conversation about the benefits of leasing and why I chose to lease over purchasing. But again, like I said, purchasing is not out the option. It's not an option that I'm not willing to consider, but it's just not my primary option. So thanks again for tuning in. Hit the like and subscribe. See you in the next video. Peace. Stay tuned. See you in these streets. Peace.